The biggest volcanic eruption of the past 2 million years. 75,000 years ago, the supervolcano Toba threw the planet into climatic chaos. Temperatures all over the planet dropped. The world entered into a volcanic winter, and the human race was forced to the brink of extinction. How could one eruption have caused such apocalyptic change? And what will happen if and when this type of megastorm happens again? In 73,000 BC, in Sumatra, Indonesia, a sleeping giant named Toba awoke from a 700,000-year slumber. It unleashed the most explosive volcanic eruption of the past 2 million years. 3,000 times more powerful than the Mount St. Helens eruption, Toba sent volcanic debris flying through the air at speeds of up to 60 miles an hour. Every living thing within 500 miles was doomed. The eruption continued for an entire week. In all, Toba launched 2,800 cubic kilometers of red-hot magma 30 miles into the air. The ash spread for more than 2,000 miles and buried everything in its path to a depth of up to 20 feet. The ash began to block out the sun. With a volcano like Mount St. Helens, the effects are felt locally. The initial eruption and the ash it releases are what caused the destruction. But Toba also released something more deadly: massive amounts of invisible sulfur-based gases. These gases reached the highest layers of the atmosphere, which enabled them to travel around the world, setting the stage for this one eruption to unleash a global disaster. Major problems like near instantaneous and drastic temperature changes. With the sun's rays being deflected back into space, global temperatures plummeted by as much as 25 degrees Fahrenheit. The entire planet was plunged into perpetual winter. Toba had unleashed a worldwide catastrophe, a phenomenon scientists labeled as a volcanic winter. It would take 20,000 atomic weapons to produce a nuclear winter as severe as Toba's volcanic winter. The drop in temperature quickly turned lush rainforests into dry wastelands and arid deserts into frozen tundra. Vegetation, unable to adapt to the sudden change, quickly dried up or froze. Animals couldn't find enough nourishment to survive and perished. With the food chain crumbling, prehistoric humans who relied on hunting and gathering began to die. At the time of Toba's eruption, there may have been as few as 1 million people inhabiting the whole planet, concentrated in parts of Africa and Asia. Into the volcanic winter, and temperatures continued to drop. They began to succumb to starvation and disease.
So there would have been generations of people who had lived in a relatively warm global climate for 50,000 years, suddenly plunged into an ice age in just a few years.
The cataclysmic impact on human beings 75,000 years ago may have had an enduring effect on today's humans. The global storm set off by Toba 75,000 years ago may have crippled the planet and pushed humans to the brink of extinction. But how do we know that this apocalyptic event actually happened? Could a single volcanic eruption have unleashed a worldwide catastrophe that saw temperatures plummet and early humans nearly wiped out? For thousands of years, all evidence of this ancient storm remained hidden. There's no evidence that an asteroid crashed into the Earth 75,000 years ago. So there's only one event that might fit the findings: the eruption of a supervolcano.
Supervolcanoes are characterized as volcanoes that erupt over 1,000 cubic kilometers of magma.
For periods of tens of thousands of years at a time, the world's handful of supervolcanoes lie dormant. But beneath their seemingly peaceful exteriors, they're building up vast arsenals of deadly magma and gases. But where was the cataclysmic volcano that exploded 75,000 years ago in an apocalyptic eruption? On the island of Sumatra, in Indonesia, is Lake Toba. This lake is 60 miles long, 20 miles wide, and over a mile deep. It is so massive, it can be seen from space. The lake, we now know, is no ordinary body of water. It is the biggest volcanic crater in the world. Scientists discovered the lake's secret when they uncovered massive amounts of volcanic debris at the bottom of the lake and for miles around its shores.
There are several lines of evidence that tell us that Toba erupted 75,000 years ago in this cataclysmic eruption.
Are the remnants Toba left behind enough to prove that it unleashed a volcanic winter that crippled the planet? And could this type of catastrophe happen today? As scientists search for clues, they start to piece together a picture of apocalyptic change and evidence of one of the largest storms the world has ever seen. A supervolcano, it seems, carries the trigger for worldwide destruction. Beneath the Earth grows as the magma chamber fills. And when a supervolcano like Toba erupts, it doesn't just send magma through a single vertical vent like a classic volcano. It explodes in every direction, sending destructive gases into the highest layers of the atmosphere. In its wake, Toba left behind a unique footprint. A gigantic volcanic crater called a caldera of a catastrophic event. Where is the evidence on land? What happened to air temperatures? Scientists finally discovered the evidence they needed more than 7,000 miles from Sumatra, buried deep within the ice sheets of Greenland. These constitute an historic database of the weather on Earth. As each year passes, a layer of ice forms. That layer preserves the year's climatic pattern. Sulfate is a signature of volcanic eruptions. When volcanoes erupt, they emit sulfur gases along with the ash and rock. Small sulfate peaks in the ice usually indicate a typical volcanic eruption somewhere in the world. But the sulfur found from 75,000 years ago were of a different order. During a typical volcanic eruption, when sulfur is released into the air, it only has enough explosive energy behind it to make it into the lower layers of the atmosphere, the troposphere. There, it will form acid rain. But the effects of the acid rain are localized and temporary, and the sulfuric acid in the atmosphere falls in a matter of weeks. But if the volcano is massive enough, the sulfur gases will travel 15 miles into a higher layer of the atmosphere, called the stratosphere. There, they make their way around the globe and take on a destructive character. They can unleash a volcanic winter. Scientists have seen the effects of this sulfur dioxide in recent history. In 1815, the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia killed more than 10,000 people and caused a year-long volcanic winter that we now call the year without a summer. But as devastating as Tambora's eruption was, it would have paled in comparison to the volcanic winter precipitated by Toba. When the size of Tambora caused the year without a summer, then Toba could have easily caused the decade without a summer. It unleashed a volcanic winter that may have pushed the planet into a 1,000-year ice age and brought human beings to the brink of extinction. But could this type of megastorm happen today? Is there another sleeping giant out there, waiting to erupt and wreak havoc? Modern world and the human race survive. Today, The site where Toba erupted is showing signs of increased volatility. Workers are keeping a watchful eye on the seismic activity in the area.
Million years, Toba has erupted 4 times. Could it erupt again? We believe there is magma still beneath Lake Toba. There are small volcanoes inside the Toba caldera, and there are hot springs in there.
For the time being, Toba does not seem to be an imminent threat. But elsewhere around the world, supervolcanoes are developing. From Italy to Japan to New Zealand. They erupted in prehistoric times, and they will erupt again. When that happens, they will trigger disasters that could cripple modern society. Supervolcanoes do not simply erupt, they become the catalyst for global climate change and devastation. Unlike other natural disasters that are often localized and even avoidable, a natural disaster like the one unleashed by Toba is inescapable. The volcanic winter and the consequences of such apocalyptic change may only happen once every 100,000 years or so. But when they occur, the planet and its inhabitants are changed forever.